everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. You're watching The Vuyo Show. We're coming to you, of course, from New York City, and we have a special guest in studio joining us today. Recently, when we had our special episode at the gallery in Soho, I did share with you guys that there was a conference happening in New York, the Columbia Africa Conference, and we were there, of course, to show you what went down. But today in studio, we have the co-president of the Africa Business Club at Columbia Business School. And he's here to share with us the insight, what went down, what didn't, and what is there to expect in the future from the club, and so much more. So please sit back, relax, and let's welcome onto the show, ladies and gents, the one and only, a regular now on the Vuyo Show, this Tonte Lawson.
Thank you for having me.
Last time we were here, there was a studio audience that gave you a massive round of applause.
Yes, I remember it.
Sorry, we don't have that in studio.
I'll imagine it. It's fine.
But how are you doing, Tonte?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm good. I mean, I've been recovering from your conference, 2 days of just going at it.
Exactly.
But our audience has kind of met you now and knows you a little bit and kind of has an idea of who you are. But I'm going to just go a little bit more deeper in and just understand your positioning and what has placed you in to being co-president of such a prestigious club. So what is the qualifications that you can say, you know, I've done this, and now this has placed me in this position?
Honestly, I wish I could spell it out like that, but I don't think there's any particular set of things that someone can put on paper to say, you know what, this prepares you for such a role. I definitely don't think I was prepared for this, in hindsight now. I had previously been head of an African club in university back in the UK, and that didn't prepare me for this. If anything, it's some of the leadership courses while I was at Columbia Business School that I've tapped into while being co-president, because it doesn't prepare you for the stress that comes with something like the conference that we just had. I mean, you were there, you saw you saw things from the front, and maybe you saw some of the things from the back as well, but I can tell you nothing prepares you for that.
But you were so calm at it, like, I swear. Everyone thought you were not even stressed at any point, because you kind of showed us the calmness in leadership that one can possess.
I'm happy you came out that way, because that was definitely not what was happening.
You were dying inside.
I was dying inside.
You said that you went to school in London as well. What's your background? I'm Nigerian. I'm from Nigeria. I lived in Nigeria, grew up in Nigeria. I did some part of school in the UK, specifically in the University of Bath. I studied mechanical engineering as a typical Nigerian course, never practiced it. Road to success.
Hey, here we are. And then I went back to Nigeria, worked for a bit, and decided to do an MBA. So I found myself in New York for the first time.
I see. So from Nigeria to the UK, and then that transition to New York City.
Yeah.
And mechanical engineering. Whenever I speak to engineers, and we're gonna touch base into the conference in a sec. But whenever I speak to engineers, there's something about engineering that I find so fascinating, that people who do that particular line of work just are multifaceted in their approach into whatever that they do, right? You find people who've done this course in business, in tech, in, every industry that you can kind of think of and imagine. In your understanding, what prepares you for the world in that sector?
That's
and to
a
be
good
able
question.
to touch base.
I think it's basically the way of thinking. So engineering for me prepared me to tackle anything I put my mind to, and I think one of the reasons for going into engineering was that analytical thinking anyway. So I think it was a good match in that perspective. Studying mechanical engineering, going back home to Nigeria, for me, the only thing I could see was oil and gas, So I was like, you know what? I've seen a lot of mechanical engineers from my class move to finance, move to business, and it was the same thing. They said, look, you have an analytical way of thinking. We can apply that to wherever you go. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should explore something else before I finally settle into mechanical engineering fully. And that was what took me to finance in Nigeria. So I worked for the Sovereign Wealth Fund in Nigeria. It was supposed to be like a year or two just seeing what finance was like. Ended up staying for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's a kind of a regular story in Nigeria these days. So I told myself, you know what, after loads of years of procrastinating an MBA, I said it's either I do it this year or I don't. And ultimately started the applications and found myself with a last minute offer from Colombia and a flight to New York. I would never have put myself here 5, 10 years ago.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful story. And I just want to touch base on the leadership component, because I would only imagine that for you to see yourself in leadership positions, there must be some sort of influence of leadership. Where did you see leadership? Did you come across it a lot while either in that 8 years in finance or before? Have you always been a leader?
I have not always been a leader. In fact, I find it funny when I call myself a leader now. It's I think you're only as good as the people around you. While I was in a leadership position in a club in university, it didn't translate to much responsibility. At least it felt like it at that time, but in hindsight now, it wasn't that much responsibility. But then I think the people around you, like I said, are always people you can look at and take advantage of. I mean, in back home in Nigeria, it was my family, specifically my father. He's always been like in leadership roles for as long as I can remember, and the way he tackles it, I think, is a learning curve for anyone who's there. I mean, it's tough being in that shadow, but you definitely learn a thing or two that you could apply. Especially like you talked about calmness. That was kind of his style as well. With all hell breaking loose, he was always calm. And then I moved on to work in finance, and then had some great leaders there. And it's funny because we're a small organization, 30, 40 people. But then the responsibility we had as a sovereign wealth fund, nothing prepares you for that as well. And I got thrown into that. And ultimately, I think that helps you as well to not drown wherever you are, you find yourself.
Yeah, that gives us context, because it's you always wonder, and I always ask myself the question, what informs this individual's leadership style? Why they're in leadership in the first place, right? And what are some of the qualities that they've learned that they're now embodying? And you share some of those from your experience.
Exactly, yeah.
So when coming to Columbia, prestigious Ivy League school, I mean, when you say the name, anywhere you go, everyone's like, who, the choice to coming to Columbia, what informed that, and kind of specifically, Columbia?
Honestly speaking, I'm ashamed to say this in front of everyone, but Colombia was never on the radar.
Okay.
I told myself I was going to come to the U.S. only for an Ivy League. So I did have an offer from INSEAD in France, and for the longest time I was going to go there. I told myself I was going to apply to Wharton.
Wow.
And I missed the application deadline. And someone was like, you know what, I think Colombia is still open for another week or so. And there was a part of me that was afraid of the U.S. I mean, the same way people get scared about when they hear about stories back home in Africa. Yeah. Even going to the U.K., there was that initial fear that you don't know what you're going into. Same thing for the U.S. I thought, you know what, everything I fear about the U.S. is probably going to be exemplified in New York.
Fair.
And so I had to prepare myself mentally. I think it took a month or so of trying to decide between INSEAD and Columbia. But ultimately, it was the name. It was the fact that it was New York. I saw myself in a career aligned with being in New York. And so I jumped. And I think it was a very good decision in hindsight. New York is very diverse. Columbia itself is... it has everything I need basically to succeed in the future, and I'm happy I made that choice.
Yeah, and which finance pro doesn't want to go to Wall Street, right?
Exactly. Wall Street is just down the road.
It's down the road. Why
exactly.
not? Why not? Now you joined the Africa Business Club. When in your time at Columbia did you join the club?
So I joined the club as an AVP.
AVP being?
More or less an assistant VP.
Okay.
So the VPs are the ones that have the main roles within the club. And so an assistant more or less is, or an associate VP, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the actual name, and shame on me for that. But I think that is just for the first years. So you kind of have a clue of what's going on around you. You're helping out, and it prepares you for another role, a VP role in the club later on. And so I was an AVP of events. And even that was not strategic in itself. I just wanted to be involved in the club. So I saw how they worked. That probably prepared me a bit for the conference, if I'm being honest. And it was at some point while the second years were transitioning out that I made that decision to actually apply
Yeah.
for the co-president role, and it was an election, and thank God, like I was a bit popular.
Did you campaign? Did you
I did. I actually did. Yeah, it's funny because I don't think the previous years campaigned as much as we did. We only had one person who talked about being in a presidency role, which is one of the reasons I applied as well. I was like, well, there's 2 roles, 2 slots. Might as well put myself in there. And then it turns out there were like 5 of us. And so there was a campaign. I found myself, looking for votes and lobbying people left and right.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
But,
I love a winning story though.
It is.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you have, because I was in the events team, I had a good relationship with the second years. I had been in touch with everyone. It helped, to be a face that has been seen already. And I think that ultimately did it for me.
And what is the club? What is the Africa Business Club, if you were to kind of exemplify it to someone watching?
So the Africa Business Club is, there are loads of ways I've described it to people over the years, over the months. But if anything, for those watching, for those listening, I would probably want to define it now as a club that is supporting interests of Africa. So people believe that, you go to the Africa Business Club because you're African. I want to take it a step further and say because you have an interest in Africa. So it's not just for Africans in Colombia. It's in the business school specifically. It's for anyone who has an interest in Africa, in the wider idea of Africa, the challenges, the future, the opportunities. Anyone is welcome in the Africa Business Club who shares that same ideology. Together we promote everything Africa. So that's ultimately what led to being involved in the conference as well.
Is the club for the students of the school, or it's kind of open to the public?
So it is for students within the business school specifically.
Business school, okay.
Which is why when the conference came around, we tried to tap into the other African clubs within Colombia to make sure this was an amalgamation and collaboration by multiple schools.
So it specifically kind of centers, as you said, the interests of Africa for the business school students and the wider community at Columbia.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And you guys host a multitude of events throughout the year, but this one specifically, the Columbia Africa Conference. What is that for? What is the goal and the role of that particular conference in the entirety of the year for the club? Okay,
so the conference itself embodies the same principles of the club, in the sense that it tries to shine a light and provide a space for dialogue around all things Africa, both the challenges, the trends, the future prospects, everything that is Africa. And we don't shy away from talking about anything. It could be like what is wrong right now. We would have influential policymakers there. We would have global leaders there. We would have, this time we had a Nobel laureate there. So it's really like anything around the discussion, dialogue around Africa. And it's gotten bigger and bigger over the years. It used to be called the African Economic Forum. And only changed about 3 years ago to the Columbia Africa Conference, I think to reflect more so that it's more diverse than just economic issues. And also to make sure that the inclusion of all the Columbia Africa clubs was highlighted.
Noted. It's in its 21st year.
Indeed, yes.
That is iconic.
Yeah. So imagine trying to organize the 21st after the 20th anniversary last year, which was big in itself. So there's a lot of pressure.
I can imagine. Now take us through what went down this year. Again, to those watching, we did cover this event on the VN Global TV channel, so go watch the full experience. But in your eyes, in your understanding, in a less stressed, now in hindsight, because now you're not that stressed, you're more relaxed now. How was the experience and what was it like for you this year?
It was super stressful. You know what? I don't think you can pay me to do this again. I jumped on it from a support role because within the club we have our conference chairs, and they typically take part and with the rest of the conference chairs from the different schools in Colombia. They take charge of the entire conference. But we found ourselves in a situation where we just didn't have enough people. the team wasn't big enough, and so the co-presidents had to step in and also support in a role that was much more than what we thought it was going to be. And that also aligned with networking outside of the club, meeting people. And I think the conference team heavily relied on us to do that on their behalf because we were used to doing that anyway for the club. And so my co-president and I, who he would have loved to be here as well, but couldn't make it, unfortunately. It was something that honestly we don't want to wish on anyone. The timing, I think, specifically of the conference is quite tough because technically speaking, the school resumes at the end of August, the first week of September-ish. And to be having a conference at the end of October, we're basically like the first conference of the year for Colombia. And this is a conference, ideally, in hindsight now, I would say it probably takes about 5 to 6 months to plan. Which we didn't have because during the summer, everyone's focused on their summer internships. And so you make plans to do a lot of work over the summer, and then the summer comes and you're focused on getting a job, which is the main reason you came to business school, right? So you can't force people to drop all of that and focus on the conference. And we found ourselves at the end of August very behind. So it was all hands on deck. All the structures, the beautiful structures we had in place, to make sure we had a successful conference, just went out the window. So everything from speakers to logistics, to the gala, it was crazy. And I'm just happy that it turned out to be something I would describe as chaos from the back, but beauty from the front. I didn't watch as much of the conference as I wanted to, and I'm relying on your network to provide that. Because the first day, Friday, I did manage to sit back and take some of it all in, and I was very impressed with the work we had done based on how things had gone. And I will get into some of that eventually. But Saturday was a different story entirely. Behind the scenes, fighting fires, trying to make sure everything ran smoothly. And ultimately, based on the feedback, we're happy that people didn't notice how chaotic it was from the back. Yeah.
And I was about to say, I mean, from your perspective, it might have been chaotic, but what was the feedback? Like, what was the good that came out of it? The positive?
Yes. The positive feedback we've received has been actually very enlightening, very touching for us because we expected people that were associated with the club to give us good feedback, but to hear it from everyone else, people who have never been to the conference before, people who had been to the conference the year before, people who have been for multiple conferences who are just in the Colombia community, to hear from them saying, well done, guys, this was amazing. People talked about how we need to expand this. They clearly don't know how much stress this has cost them, but people talked about how they would love to see this expanded. People talked about how people just don't know about this enough, and if it was possible for us to reach the rest of the country as opposed to just New York, which is what we tried to do, but given the timeline, obviously was quite limited. So I think to hear that and to hear people talk about how they're definitely coming back next year, how this was very inspiring, the speakers, the quality of speakers that we had, I think really touched people.
And some of the folks that made the positive experience a lot more positive were the partners in which you had, and just shouting them out for a bit as well.
And apologies if I miss out anyone here, but we did have the partner schools to start with. So we had SIPA, the School of International Public Affairs. We had the law school. We had the School of Engineering. We had the School of Public Health. Those were the official collaborators, but then we also had support from the undergrad, the ASA, which is the African Student Association, and the undergrads. We had help from National Black Society of Engineers. We had help from people that we didn't even expect, who were not part of the entire core planning team. We had support on the day in terms of volunteering, in terms of even like sponsoring food and things like that. It was very good. And then we had the official sponsors who came in from places we didn't expect. I think we probably had the least number of corporate sponsors this year because of the timing at which we were going to get sponsors. But we had grants from the likes of the Mellon Foundation, who had a representative there, who was on my panel. It was very, very insightful. We had the school support us as well in different ways. We had the Chasing Institute, the Chasing Leadership Group. We had Sylphin Leadership Group. We had media partnership from yourselves. We had media partnership from Afro Vibes. It was a good example of community, like coming in when you needed it, because we were down in terms of sponsorship, and to think that without any of the big names that are usually there, we still came out with a lot of funding to fund this conference was very, very, very proud, something I'm proud of. Yeah.
And for someone who's listening and hearing you say what you're saying now and is thinking, listen, I want to be part of those people next year, right? Or in anything else that comes, which you're going to be unpacking now, what's coming in the future. How does one get involved specifically in that component of partnering and sponsorships, etc.?
So we're always open to sponsors. We're always looking for people who are willing to support. I think a conversation with anybody from any of the schools in this collaboration would go a long way. Right now, we're actually actively looking for sponsors for next year's conference, and sponsors for the club itself, just generally, so that we kind of relieve some of the burden that we had to go through for the next year, so that they can have some kind of foundation to build. And not have to run around like we did and sell ourselves for sponsorship. But if anyone's interested in sponsoring or even just partnering with the Columbia Africa Conference, we have the website. It stays open 24/7 throughout the year. That's the ColumbiaAfricaConference.com. And like I said, with the Africa Business Club, the other clubs within the other schools, any kind of contact to them, and it will get back to the same group of people. So,
Now, if you want to plug in,
nothing is too small. Nothing is too small. We take everything.
Now, speaking of the website, I remember when I first came across the website, and one of the first things that I saw was former president of Senegal. And I was so ecstatic. Like, I love, as I said in my speech, I love chilling with the big boys, right? So I was like, every time I get to engage with the president, I am excited. So I was looking so much forward to seeing the former president of Senegal at the conference, but I looked around and he was not there. So please clarify why he wasn't there.
So we didn't actually officially put out a statement to say this, because it was quite sudden, and it happened. It's funny that you mentioned that, because in the last show I think I touched on the fact that we had become geopolitical warriors just trying to organize a conference, and that was one of the reasons, because it's such a big name that there are different things that come with that. For us, we were dealing with that behind the scenes. We had obviously people reach out to us not happy about his participation. We had people reach out who were looking forward to seeing him, and so ultimately there was disappointment from all sides at some point of the journey of this conference, either when he wasn't coming anymore or when he was announced, and that journey was it was quite stressful for us, if I'm being honest. Ultimately, Macky Sall did not make it because of his personal reasons, and I would like to set the record straight on that, because I think some people believe that we cancelled Macky Sall because of all the pressure we were getting behind the scenes, which is not the case. If I remember correctly, he stepped down from his role in the 4P in Paris as a special envoy, and I think that tied to certain commitments he had in New York, which was ultimately bringing him here for loads of different meetings. This is not what was communicated to us, but we connected the dots, and he cancelled about a week before the conference, which was very stressful for us. We had a lot of compared to previous conferences, we had a lot of keynote speakers, so we decided to just go ahead with it. And then we had a couple of other keynotes canceled as well a day before. So to say that we went through is a bit of an underestimation. But Macky Sall himself, there was a lot of dialogue with the community based on his appearance. A lot of people were not that ecstatic to see him in the conference as a keynote speaker. We had loads of communication about that. We probably still have a few journalists in our emails still asking us for comments, because I'm telling you, like, trying to organize a small conference in the spec of things, and then finding yourselves in the newspapers in Senegal, canceling Macky Sall. That is something no one wants to be dealing with while still under the same pressures of organizing a conference. But I'll probably have to write a book on that one day. We found ourselves as firefighters.
Publish it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the stories are plenty. Like, we never thought we'd go through all this just in organizing a conference like we were doing. Yeah.
But I mean, bringing again, the big boys of that magnitude, one can anticipate
Yes.
big problems because
Yes.
it's big people. What was the big problem? You said there were two sides, one being excited for him being here and the other not. Why was the other one not? I mean, it's a president, right? Former
Yeah.
president of a
Yeah.
country. Everyone should be ecstatic to meet him and,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, just engage or even hear what he has to say. So what was the other side?
That was the thinking from our side. You know, like there were a lot of things that we wanted to highlight in bringing Macky Sall. We were bringing him for a specific purpose. We weren't advocating for all the things he did as president, which I think was the issue with some of the other side of things we were getting. We were, as you know, like, I mean, I don't want to speculate as to what Senegalese politics it should or should not be. But I know that even though he was the longest serving president, he was there for 12 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. But his transition out of power, I think, was a rough period for Senegal. And there were a lot of things that happened in that period, which I think is the main source of anger for many of the people who didn't want to see him. I can't specify exactly what it is that they had as a problem with him, but I know most of it ties to that period when when the elections were postponed and things like that. So and there was a lot of rioting. So I would guess it had something to do with that, and a lot of it was in French. I don't speak French, but we had emails, we had a petition at some point. But it's kind of tough to manage all of that, even from a marketing perspective, because it's coming from areas that we're not really tapping into. We're not monitoring the Senegalese reaction in Dakar. Or, we don't know what's going on there. It was brought to our attention, and so we handled it as best as we could, just individually sending out emails, letting people know why we invited him, for what we were trying to discuss, and also encouraging them to come to the conference and express themselves, not in the form of a protest outside the conference, but in the form of questions, engaging them in dialogue, because that's the whole point of the conference. So most times I ended up those conversations with, you know what, buy a ticket, come, ask your question. You probably get an answer. So that's the good thing about conferences like this.
And what I just want to kind of get to some of the grievances that people had with his appearance. What are some of the things that students or the engagement of the community, or some of the grievances that made them say that they might not be keen on him being physically at the conference? Yeah,
so I think most of the pushback was from the community. Within the school, there was some pushback which we tried to handle. There was one particular case of homophobia in Senegal, which it's a big issue, but it's also an issue like Africa-wide. And to address that, as look, we're not supporting that particular. I mean, Africa has a lot of problems. It has key problems that are not going to be solved right now. And inviting a president from Africa, a former president from Africa, you're going to most likely, 95% very likely, that you're going to run into similar problems, because this is an Africa problem. It's not a Senegal problem, where people, I think, on the surface, are probably not willing to go in certain directions that the West has placed on as advocated for, and it's a very touchy issue, which is why we had to handle that. But in the middle of handling that, then we got issues from the community as well, where people cited a lot of the riots that happened in that electoral period, where I think there were some deaths, there was resistance from the government while he was in power. It wasn't a pretty thing, and it kind of, I think, I can't speak for his entire time as president, but it didn't leave a good taste in a lot of people's remembrance of him. So, and that was just in March. So it's still fresh in a lot of people's memories. And we're in Harlem, where there's a large Senegalese community. So it brought it home for us in a way that was real, very real.
That gives context.
Yeah.
That gives a lot of context. Again, because I think it's important to have those dialogues, and with him being here in person, would have been able to clear that quite clearly for the community. With that said, the conference was a success.
It was.
It happened. It concluded. How was the after party? I know I missed that.
Oh yes, and I'm still holding that against you, because that was, I think, it culminated in a massive gala that allowed everyone, I think, to de-stress, especially the core planning team. They had gone through the entire stress of the conference, so it was a time for them to put on their best African wear, which, trust me, there was evidence of that. I'm sure the New York tailors had a field weekend because there were all kinds of traditional attires on view. And then we also had Fields, a Nigerian Afrobeat star, perform. And so a lot of people were excited about that. There was a lot of jolly feelings, probably aided by alcohol. I can't lie. Personally, for me, it was great. I still was on edge for half of that event, and then eventually, when most of the things were going out of the way, then I had some time to relax.
Yeah. I heard that the gala is the main thing. Like, people don't even come to listen to the panels. They just come to the
that's a myth. That's a myth. I'll tell you that there are a lot of people who are coming to the conference for different things. Some people come in just generally for the experience of hearing dialogue in Africa. Some people are coming because their friends are speaking. Some people are coming because they've seen a speaker that they actually want to hear from. We had people there with massive followings on social media. So people came directly just for that. And then there were people who came for the gala. People who have some experience with the gala from previous years. People who don't have any experience but are willing, we're hoping to experience that this year. And then just putting Phil's name out there. I think a lot of people also wanted to see him perform live. So it was like a mini concert. You get a gala, you get food, drinks, you get a small performance. It was everything in one. So we encouraged people to buy tickets for the conference and gala together. And I think that we'll never know what the push was, whether it was the gala, whether it was the conference.
No, I certainly missed on the gala.
You definitely did.
But maybe next year. We'll see. We'll see. What's next for the conference as well as the club?
So for the conference, we have had debrief meetings, and it's evident that everyone has highlighted like what could have been done better, what could be bigger next year. It's very easy to point and say, you know what, this is what we want to do next year, much bigger, much better, which is what we said as well. And then at some point in that conversation throughout the year, you then get to a point where it's like, if we put on a conference similar to last year, we'll be lucky. So we're very careful about saying we want to make it bigger, but that is the reality. We are trying to make it bigger. We're going to try not to make the same mistakes we did this year. In terms of timing, and then in terms of schools as well, we're trying to get more schools in collaboration. So we've reached out to the School of Climate Studies. We've reached out to journalism, School of Journalism. So we're trying to make it as big as of a community project as possible. And if we have many of the schools, even up to 8 at some point, collaborating, if we have the community tapped in, if we have even the wider East Coast network of schools, of business schools and of other schools tapping in, then we expect and anticipate it's going to be bigger than ever next year. For the club, where everyone's resting right now, it was a big lift from the club. And I'm proud of every one of the members. But we have some other events lined up, mostly club activities within the school itself. But then we are hoping to have another event in springtime, similar to the prequel for the conference, which was the Muggles of Africa, which you were present for. Something along those lines. Ideally, before the conference, we were thinking that this would be driven by the sponsors of the conference. But seeing that we don't have that many corporate sponsors, there's going to be some kind of direction from the clubs, and also some input from the sponsors that we had to have an event that is not like the conference at all, but in the sense that it's not going to be 2 days, but it's going to be similar, hearing from one aspect of Africa, maybe entertainment, maybe real estate, maybe power. That has not been communicated yet, but we will have more information on the conference website and on the Africa Business Club website at some point. So we're looking forward to spring. I think at that point, a lot of people have calmed down. People have secured jobs, so everyone's more involved. So that could be a big event as well.
So much excitement coming from the club, and I know you guys are on socials, right? Is that where people can plug in to find out what's going
especially
on?
Instagram. It's the Africa Business, the CBS_ABC, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's the Columbia Africa Conference on IG as well. So we're very active on IG, on LinkedIn, and on the website. and they all tie into each other. So if you follow one, you see the rest of them there. So definitely follow us, please.
Wow. No, we definitely got that, and I'm sure that anyone who's watching who wants to tap in and be involved will go ahead and do that. But before I let you go, I just want to touch base on the importance of kind of the community aspect and the networking aspect of either the club or the conference. What is the emphasis on that, on building community, on emphasizing the value of networking? And is that something that's at the core of the club as well?
Funny enough, that's something that was at the core of my campaign when I was running. So we've always had tapping in from the community, and it's helped us, especially in avoiding things like the entire geopolitical situation we had. So the whole point of my tenure, at least, was to, we're going to tap into the community like we've never done before. Because a lot of people know about the business school down the road, but a lot of people don't feel that connected to it. And that is one of the things that we heard in some of the feedback. Like, look, I live just 3-4 blocks from here. I had never heard about this until a week ago, and I'm so happy I came, and I think you need to get the rest of the community involved. So in that aspect, I think it's going to be very vital that we start early, start getting the community involved, not just the conference, but with the club. And if we can get the community involved with the club, then the conference naturally would follow. And so we're organizing events. We have a department within the club that is focused on community and partnerships. And so they are tapping into the wider community, not just the schools within Colombia, but generally Harlem and then the wider New York community. We envision ourselves at some point reaching every aspect of the community, even down to church. Like, you might see us knocking on the church door, like inviting people to come to the ABC. So it's that kind of thing, and we're hoping that everyone feels some kind of partnership, some kind of tie to the Columbia Business School, and it's not just that fancy building down the road.
And so the way I saw everyone in suits and high-heeled and dresses, I was like, people are here to network. People are here to meet business partners, potential investors, or vice versa. So the cultivation of that, kind of being at the helm of the conference, was just incredible for me to see.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping that folks were able to meet people.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we hope to have some more partnerships coming out from the conference itself. Just partnerships with people down the road, people who are vendors. I mean, like, we have different vendors involved, and so we will try and expand that so the conference becomes a community effort where the guy selling smoothies down the road is sponsoring our smoothies for lunch and things like that. It's a community effort that we're hoping to build and get bigger.
Amazing. Colombia, business, Africa. So many
it's a lot of words. I know.
I'm just like tongue twisting. But I have to let you go. I know you have to rush out of here. Any last words? Anything you want to make sure to say before we wrap it up?
I mean, I would echo what I said at the end of the conference, which is as much as possible, we're trying our best to build dialogue around Africa, but then we need to make sure that everyone taps into their own responsibilities. It's not going to be a community effort except each individual does their own bit. So for all we're doing right now, each and every one of us has to do their own bit to make sure that Africa is well represented in New York, in the US, and in the world.
Course. And those are the words, ladies and gents, of the co-president of the Colombia Africa Club, the Africa Business Club.
We'll get there eventually.
I'm getting there. But thank you so much, Tonte, for joining me on the show. Looking forward to seeing, the continuous success of more events that are coming from the club.
Thank you.
And the 2025 conference. Hopefully I'll come to the gala.
Please.
That time.
Don't miss out.
Gotta start planning my outfit.
Exactly. Come on now.
But thank you at home for tuning in as well on this installment of the Vuyo Show. We'll see you again next time with another special guest. So make sure that you stay tuned. For myself, Tonte, and the rest of the team, it's goodbye and have a fantastic one. Cheers for now.